I'm Chef Daddy, and I'm here to show you how to make the bestest, fluffiest, yeastiest, tastiest, just plain white bread that you can possibly make in a bread machine. We're going to be using the recipe titled Fluffy Basic Bread Rev 2 2021. After you've done this 2 or 3 times, you won't need to look at the recipe again, but today we're going to do it step by step. So first, let's get out the ingredients and tools. Set them out so that they're easy to find. Now, the first thing we're going to do is give the yeast an appetizer to make it ravenously hungry when it goes to work on the flour. Start off by putting 9 ounces of very warm tap water into a 2-cup measuring cup. Your hot tap water is probably about 120 degrees, so putting hot tap water into a room temperature cup will make it just about right. The amount of water is quite important, so measure it carefully. Now put 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar into the water and stir it until the sugar is completely dissolved. Take the bread machine pan out of the machine and look to be sure the rotor is in there. Now put the sugar and water mixture into the bread machine pan. Open the yeast package and sprinkle it evenly over the sugar water. No need to stir. Now set your kitchen timer for 10 minutes. By the end of 10 minutes, this mixture will be somewhat foamy, and the yeasty smell will be driving you wild with hunger. While the yeast is working on the sugar water, measure your dry ingredients into a mixing bowl. First, 3 level cups of all-purpose flour. This measurement is also quite important, so overfill the cup, shake it, and then use the backside of a knife to level each cupful. Now add the salt. The recipe says 1 teaspoon. That's the minimum. I like bread a little bit saltier, so I use about 1.5 teaspoons. It's not critical. To give the bread a little more body, you could add 1 tablespoonful of non-fat dry milk. That's not essential, but I like it that way. All the dry ingredients are together now, so mix them up well with a big spoon. Is the 10 minutes up on the yeast? Okay, measure out 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil or 1/4 cup of melted butter and put it in with the sugar, water, and yeast mixture. This measurement is not critical. I like it best with olive oil, but if you like a buttery flavor to the bread, why, do it with butter. Now pour the dry ingredients into the bread machine pan, right on top of the liquids. There's no need to stir it. That's what the bread machine is for. Time now to put the pan into the bread machine and close the lid. Set the bread machine settings to white bread, medium, that means medium brownness of the crust, and large, which means a large loaf. This recipe makes the biggest loaf the machine can do. Now just push start on the bread machine and watch. And it's fun to watch. The machine will mix the ingredients and knead the dough for 20 or 30 minutes. Then it will warm up inside and let the dough rise for about an hour. It's very satisfying to watch the dough rising because, like beer or wine or cheese, bread is a living thing. After the first rise, the machine will knead the dough again briefly to make it fall. That's called punching down the dough. At that time, your machine will probably sound an alarm. That means the dough is ready for you to put into a bread pan to bake in the oven. We'll deal with that in the advanced lesson. For now, we'll just leave the dough in the machine and let the machine continue to do its thing. The next thing the machine will do is let the dough rise again. Now, you may wonder why we're punching down the risen dough and then letting it rise again. The second rise gives the dough more time to strengthen and lengthen its protein molecules. That gives the bread more body and chewiness and a more complex flavor. By the way, wheat protein is called gluten. But since you're in California, you may be arrested if you call it that. So just call it plant protein, because that's exactly what it is. Finally, the machine will raise its temperature and bake the dough for 30 or 40 minutes. Then it will sound another alarm and turn itself off. It's done. Your final step is to remove the bread from the pan and turn it onto a rack to cool. Be careful, it's hot. You might need a knife or something to raise the handle on the bread pan so that you can grab it with a pot holder. Turn the pan upside down over the rack and start shaking it until the loaf slides out. It may take quite some shaking. You shouldn't need to pry the loaf out of the pan, but if you do, be sure to use a wooden or a plastic tool, not a knife, to avoid scratching the pan's nonstick surface. Let the bread cool on a rack for about an hour before serving. That's because it's still alive, and the the protein molecules are still firming up. Don't wrap it until it's cool. One more thing. Every now and then the bread machine's rotor comes out with the bread. So look in the pan and be sure the rotor is still in there. If it's not, you're going to need to perform a rotarectomy on the loaf with a sharp knife. Finally, wash the pan if it needs it. It doesn't take much washing, and I often just skip this. But if you must wash it, take the same precautions you would use on any non-stick pan. Now you know what to do. Butter, jam, eat. This is Chef Daddy saying goodbye for now. Your next lesson will be using the bread machine for the messy work of making dough and then baking it yourself in the oven. That's much better, but not for now. I love you.